The crystalline spires of the Concordette's observation post caught the dying light of Kepler 186's red dwarf sun, casting prismatic shadows across senior observer Angstick's iridescent scales. His attention focused on the holographic feed showing three human scientists moving through the planet's dense undergrowth. Their movements seemed inefficient to his eyes. Too much wasted energy, too many unnecessary adjustments. Primitive methodology, muttered his colleague, Vrax, her sensory frills vibrating with dismissal. They could have deployed automated survey drones. Angstick's response died in his throat as the feed suddenly erupted with movement. A massive shape, all teeth and armored plates, burst from the foliage. The Nexu Pride's Alpha Hunter, a predator that had claimed the lives of 16 Concordate surveyors over the past cycle. The human's primitive projectile weapons would be useless against its reinforced hide. But the humans didn't freeze. They didn't panic. They moved. The smallest human dropped and rolled beneath the creature's initial lunge, while simultaneously deploying what appeared to be a simple metal cable. The largest human sprinted not away from the threat, but toward a nearby cliff face. The third human produced a small canister and waited. Angstick's enhanced vision caught everything. The cable tangling the Nexu's legs as it landed, the largest human using the cliff for leverage, the carefully timed burst of chemical irritant from the canister. Each human moving in concert with the others despite no apparent communication, no technological coordination. The Nexu, apex predator of three worlds, killed by simple tools and coordinated movement in less than 30 seconds. Impossible, Vrax whispered. No, Angstick corrected, his scientific mind already cataloging the implications. Inevitable. They're persistence predators, Vrax. Everything about their physiology, their psychology, their social structures. It's all built around the hunt. We're not watching primitive beings. We're watching millions of years of evolutionary refinement. The feed showed the humans already collecting samples from the Nexu, discussing improvements to their tactics, planning for the next encounter. No celebration, no relief, just preparation. The Council needs to see this, Angstick decided. These humans, they don't just survive. They adapt. They improve. Every challenge makes them more efficient. You can't be serious, Vrax protested. They're centuries behind us technologically. Their ships barely achieve FTL. Their weapons are practically antiques. And yet, Angstick gestured to the feed where the humans were now methodically documenting the Nexu's weak points for future reference. They just accomplished something our best-equipped teams couldn't. Technology isn't everything, Vrax. Sometimes evolution creates something far more sophisticated than anything we could engineer. The humans' voices carried through the feed, discussing modifications to their tactics, suggesting improvements to their tools. Each one building on the other's ideas, creating a synthesis of experience and innovation that would make them even more effective next time. Contact the Council, Angstick ordered. Tell them we found something unprecedented, a species that turned survival itself into a science. And warn them, these humans aren't just another spacefaring race. They're what happens when evolution perfects the art of adaptation itself. As the message was dispatched, Angstick continued watching the humans work. Their movements were no longer inefficient in his eyes. They were precise, purposeful, every action building toward future success. These weren't primitive beings fumbling toward civilization. They were evolution's masterpiece, and the galaxy wasn't ready for what that meant. Dr. Keela Ixel's crystalline fingers danced across the neural mapping interface, her compound eyes fixed on the cascade of data flowing from the human combat simulation. Beside her, Commander Sarah Chen moved through the virtual scenario with what seemed like impossibly quick adaptation to constantly changing parameters. The test chamber in the Concordette's Advanced Research Division had never seen results like these. 23 species had undergone the combat cognition trials. None had demonstrated anything close to this level of instantaneous tactical evolution. Impossible, muttered senior researcher Vic Stahl, his photoreceptors cycling through shades of disbelief. She's not just solving the scenarios, she's predicting variations before they manifest. Kayla adjusted the neural load, increasing the complexity of the simulation. The human's brainwave patterns shifted, but not in any way their models had predicted. Instead of showing stress under the increased cognitive burden, Commander Chen's neural architecture seemed to be reconfiguring itself, creating new pathways on the fly. The simulation's changing, Chen commented casually, her hands moving through the haptic interface with fluid precision. Getting harder to read the pattern. But there's always a pattern, isn't there? Keela exchanged glances with Vixtal. They hadn't told her about the difficulty scaling. She'd simply sensed it and adapted. Commander, Kella began carefully, how are you anticipating the scenario shifts? Chen shrugged, a uniquely human gesture that still fascinated the xenobiologists. It's like a rhythm, you know. Every system has one. Once you feel it, you can sort of dance with it, even when it speeds up or slows down. The metaphor made no sense to Keela's logical mind, but the results were undeniable. Chen wasn't just reacting to the scenarios. She was somehow integrating herself into their fundamental patterns, becoming part of their flow rather than simply responding to them. Increase complexity by 300%. Vixtal ordered suddenly. Let's see how far this pattern recognition can go. The simulation warped, becoming a kaleidoscope of shifting variables and quantum uncertainties. By every metric they had, it should have been incomprehensible to an organic mind. Chen laughed. Now that's interesting, she said, her movements becoming even more fluid. It's not random at all, is it? It's like jazz. You think it's chaos until you realize it's just a more sophisticated kind of order. Kella's instruments were reporting impossible things. The human's neural pathways weren't just adapting. They were predicting. Creating models of possible futures and running them in parallel, each failed simulation feeding back into an ever-evolving understanding of the system's underlying rules. Stop the test, Vixtal ordered, his voice tight with something Keela recognized as fear. We need to analyze this. As the simulation wound down, Chen stretched, seemingly unaffected by what should have been an overwhelming cognitive load. That was fun. When can we try something really challenging? Later, in the secure analysis chamber, Keela reviewed the results with growing amazement. Their brains aren't faster than ours, she explained to the assembled Concordat scientists. In fact, by most metrics, they're slower. But they're not processing information the way we do. Explain, demanded Research Director Nelix. They don't just think linearly, or even in parallel like our advanced AI systems. They think recursively. Each thought feeds back into itself, creating layers of understanding that build on each other. They don't just learn patterns, they learn how to learn patterns. And the combat applications, Nelix pressed. Potentially unlimited, Vixtal interrupted. We thought their success in physical combat was due to their endurance or their tool use. But this is different. They don't just fight. They understand fighting at a fundamental level. Each engagement teaches them not just about that specific scenario, but about the nature of combat itself. Kayla brought up Chen's neural scans. Look at these pathways. They're not just processing the present. They're simultaneously modeling dozens of possible futures, learning from victories and defeats that haven't even happened yet. It's like they've evolved to be natural tactical supercomputers. And this is normal for them. Nelix asked, his tone carrying a note of worry. That's the most remarkable part, Killa confirmed. Commander Chen's results are impressive, but not exceptional by human standards. They all do this to varying degrees. It's built into their neural architecture. The implications hung heavy in the chamber's recycled air. The Concordat had spent centuries developing AI systems to enhance their combat capabilities. Meanwhile, evolution had been quietly crafting something far more sophisticated on a small blue world in an unremarkable solar system. Recommendations? Nelix finally asked. Kella's response was immediate. full integration into the Concordet's military research division. If we can understand how they think, perhaps we can learn to think differently ourselves. As the meeting concluded, Kella found herself watching Chen through the observation window, the human already engaged in teaching some of her tricks to junior researchers. That was another thing that fascinated her. Humans didn't hoard their advantages. They shared them, taught them, spread them. They didn't just evolve themselves. They helped others evolve too. Security Chief Zerok's primary heart nearly seized as she watched the mining colony's structural integrity readings plummet. The quantum reactor breach had weakened the main support pillars of Outpost Sigma 9, and 3,000 colonists, representing 12 different species, were now trapped in a failing underwater habitat 2 kilometers beneath Europa's ice sheet. Evacuation pods are insufficient, her second-in-command reported. Even at maximum capacity, we can only save 60% of the population before total collapse. The situation exemplified everything the Vexteri officer had been trained to fear: chaos, breakdown of command structure, multiple species with conflicting survival priorities. It should have devolved into panic and violence within minutes. Then she saw the humans move. There were only 8 of them on the station, maintenance workers and deep-sea construction specialists. They hadn't waited for orders. They hadn't even waited for each other. Like particles in a quantum field, they seemed to instantly align into a coherent pattern. "Watch," she ordered, focusing the station's internal sensors on their activities. The humans had already split into pairs, each moving with purpose. 2 headed for the reactor core, carrying makeshift repair equipment. Another pair began organizing evacuation groups, somehow managing to keep the panicking aliens calm through sheer force of personality. The remaining 4 were improvising structural supports from mining equipment, their movements synchronized despite having never trained together. "Impossible," her second muttered. "They have no command structure, no unified communication system. How are they coordinating?" Zarek's sensory frills vibrated with sudden understanding. "They're not coordinating. They're hunting. Hunting. Hunting what? The problem itself." She zoomed in on one pair of humans who had begun reinforcing a buckling wall. "Look at their movements. They're treating this crisis like prey. Each team is attacking a different weakness, herding the danger into a manageable form." The humans had started pulling in others now. A Centaurian engineer here, a Proximan physicist there. Species that normally required extensive diplomatic protocols to work together were being seamlessly integrated into the humans' informal command structure. Their social dynamics, Zarek realized. They're pack hunters, but they can form packs with anyone. Any species, any background. They don't need formal hierarchies or established protocols. They just adapt. The station's integrity readings began to stabilize. Somehow, the reactor breach was being contained. The makeshift supports were holding. The evacuation was proceeding with impossible efficiency, with different species actually helping each other instead of competing for resources. "Get me their files," Zarek ordered. "I want to know everything about these humans." The data only deepened her amazement. None of them had ever worked together before this assignment. They came from different nations, different specialties. On paper, they shouldn't have been able to form an effective team at all. "Look at this," her second said, highlighting a section of the data. "Their heart rates and stress hormones. They're elevated, but not in a pattern indicating fear. They're excited." Zarek watched as the humans continued their work, their efficiency actually increasing as the situation grew more desperate. They evolved chasing prey that could kill them, she mused. Their entire species learned to turn stress into focus, danger into opportunity. And now they're teaching that skill to others. Through the command center's viewport, she could see one of the humans showing a group of Proximan younglings how to brace a support beam. The children were mimicking not just the humans' actions, but their calm, focused demeanor. "Send a priority message to command," Zarek decided. "Tell them we've discovered something unprecedented, a species that doesn't just survive crisis. They thrive on it. And more importantly, they can teach others to do the same. Hours later, when the station had been fully stabilized and the emergency declared over, Zarak found herself studying the humans as they helped with repairs. They showed no signs of post-crisis shock, no trauma response. Instead, they were already analyzing the event, suggesting improvements, teaching others what they'd learned. "We've been looking at them wrong," she told her second. "We thought their lack of formal hierarchy was a weakness, but it's their greatest strength. They don't need rigid command structures because they can form instant, adaptive organizations around any problem." She watched as one of the humans casually demonstrated an improved bracing technique to a mixed group of aliens, the knowledge spreading through the station's population like a benevolent virus. They're not just hunters, she realized. They're teachers. Every crisis makes them stronger, and they make everyone around them stronger too. The implications were staggering. In a galaxy of rigid hierarchies and carefully regulated interactions, humanity had evolved something far more powerful: the ability to create instant, effective organizations that transcended species boundaries. They weren't just survivors. They were evolution's answer to chaos itself. Deep in the void between Proxima Centauri and Wolf 359, Field Marshal Kexri of the Concordat Rescue Fleet watched the impossible unfold on his command deck's main display. The research vessel Stellar Horizon had suffered a catastrophic drive failure, stranding it in the interstellar void. Standard protocols dictated waiting for a properly equipped rescue vessel, a minimum of 3 weeks delay. The humans had other ideas. "They're doing what?" Kexri demanded, his bioluminescent patches flaring with disbelief. "Using maintenance suits to manually repair the drive housing," his tactical officer reported. "In open space, without robotic assistance." The maintenance suits weren't designed for this. They were simple environmental protection, intended for brief inspection work. No AI assistance, no advanced sensors, minimal power reserves. By any reasonable standard, what the humans were attempting was suicide. "How long have they been out there?" 14 hours, sir." Kexri's protective membranes flickered rapidly. "That's not possible. Those suits only have 10 hours of life support. The humans are sharing resources, sir, taking turns returning to the ship to recharge while others continue working. They haven't stopped since the failure occurred." The display showed 3 figures moving with deliberate precision around the massive drive housing. Their movements were slow, constrained by the suit's limitations, but they never ceased. When one human's resources ran low, another seamlessly took their place. "Magnify," Kexri ordered. The image zoomed in, showing the crude tools the humans were using. Basic welding equipment, manual pressure seals, simple mechanical devices that seemed absurdly primitive for such complex repairs. "Sir," his science officer interrupted, "you need to see their biological readings." The data scrolled across a secondary display. Elevated heart rates, stress hormones, cellular degradation from radiation exposure. By all medical standards, the human should have been incapacitated hours ago. "They're in pain," the science officer noted. "Significant pain. But their performance isn't degrading. If anything, they're becoming more efficient." Kexri watched as one human held a massive panel in place while another made repairs, their movements synchronized despite the obvious strain. "How are they maintaining precision under these conditions?" "Unknown, sir. Their neural patterns suggest they're using the pain as a focus point. It's as if they've evolved to become stronger under stress." A new alert flashed across the display. One of the human suits had developed a microfracture, causing a slow oxygen leak. "Surely they'll return now," Kexri muttered. The human noticed the leak, checked their reserves, and kept working. "Get me their communications," Kexri ordered. The humans' voices came through, strained but clear. O2 dropping faster than expected. "Might have 15 minutes left. Hold position. I can finish this section in 12. Copy that. After that, we've got the power coupling. No panic. No retreat, just calm calculation of resources versus objectives. They're not going to stop, Kexri realized. Even if it kills them, they'll keep going until the job is done. His tactical officer's appendages twitched nervously. Sir, our projections indicate the drive housing can't be repaired without proper equipment. They're risking their lives for nothing. But 6 hours later, as Kexri's rescue fleet finally arrived at the Stellar Horizon's position, they found a functioning ship. The drive housing had been repaired through a combination of improvised techniques that violated several laws of engineering that Kexri had previously considered immutable. The humans were back aboard, being treated for radiation exposure, extreme fatigue, and what should have been crippling muscle strain. They were already discussing improvements to their repair techniques. I don't understand, Kexri admitted to his science officer. Nothing in their evolution suggests they should be capable of this. Their planet never required adaptation to void conditions. That's what makes them unique, sir, the science officer replied. They didn't evolve for space. They evolved to adapt to anything. The void is just another challenge, and humans have turned challenge itself into an art form. Kexri watched as the humans began documenting their repair methods, creating training protocols for future emergencies. They weren't just enduring. They were turning their endurance into knowledge that others could use. Update the species assessment, he ordered. Humans don't just possess enhanced survival capabilities. They weaponize survival itself, turning every near-death experience into an opportunity for evolution. And they're teaching that skill to the rest of us. In the medical bay of the Stellar Horizon, the humans were already back on their feet, ignoring doctors' orders to rest, insisting on helping with the final repairs. Their bodies were battered, but their will remained unbroken. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were showing the galaxy what survival truly meant. The grand chamber of the Concordat Council hung suspended in high orbit above Centauri Prime, its crystalline walls refracting starlight across the assembled representatives of 50 spacefaring civilizations. High Counselor Vexna's sensory membranes pulsed with barely contained agitation as she reviewed the final reports on humanity. Let us be clear, she addressed the council, her translator converting her harmonic speech into standard frequencies. We are not merely discussing the addition of another species to our alliance. We are discussing the integration of something unprecedented in our 12,000 years of unified space exploration. The holographic displays activated, showing footage from the past standard year. Humans hunting apex predators with primitive tools, their neural patterns defying AI analysis, their instant adaptation to crisis situations, their impossible endurance in the void. When we first detected their radio signals, Vexna continued, we dismissed them as primitive. Their technology was crude, their societies fragmented, their conflicts seemingly endless. We were wrong. What we saw as primitive was actually something far more sophisticated. Evolution's answer to the universe's greatest challenges. Senior observer Angstic stepped forward, his scales shimmering with excitement. Their apparent technological lag isn't a weakness, it's a strength. While we focused on external solutions, they were perfecting internal ones. Their bodies aren't just survival machines, they're adaptability engines. The chamber erupted in harmonics of concern and fascination. A Proximan representative raised an appendage, but their conflicts, their constant internal strife. Another misconception. Dr. Keela Ixel interjected, her crystalline form catching the starlight. What we perceived as chaos is actually a sophisticated evolutionary algorithm. Each conflict, each challenge, forces them to adapt, to improve. They don't just survive challenges, they absorb them, learn from them, teach others to overcome them. Security Chief Zarak's report followed, showing humans forming instant, effective teams across species boundaries. They don't just adapt individually, she explained. They adapt collectively, and they can extend this ability to any species willing to learn from them. They're not just evolving themselves, they're becoming evolutionary catalysts for the entire galaxy. Field Marshal Kexry's footage of the Void rescue played next. Their endurance isn't merely physical, he noted. It's psychological. They've somehow evolved to become stronger under pressure, more focused in crisis, more effective when facing impossible odds. The council chamber fell silent as the implications settled in. These weren't just impressive traits. They were game-changing abilities that could revolutionize how the Concordat approached every challenge in the galaxy. There is a risk, Vexna acknowledged. Integrating humans into our alliance will change us. Their adaptability, their drive to overcome challenges, their ability to form instant cooperative groups. These traits will spread through our cultures like ripples in a quantum field. We must ask ourselves, are we ready for such change? A new hologram appeared, a simple Earth classroom where human children were teaching alien younglings how to solve complex problems through teamwork. Another showed human engineers working alongside Proximan architects, combining technologies in ways neither species had considered before. But perhaps, Vexna continued, that's exactly what we need. The galaxy is changing. New threats emerge. Old solutions fail. We've spent millennia building a civilization based on technological advancement and rigid hierarchies. Perhaps it's time to learn a different way. The final displays showed humans across the galaxy, teaching, learning, adapting, overcoming, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through an almost magical ability to turn any challenge into an opportunity for growth. The vote before us is simple, Vexna concluded. Do we invite humanity to join the Concordat? But the implications are profound. We're not just voting to accept a new species. We're voting to embrace evolution itself, not as a historical process, but as a living, breathing force for change. The Chamber's quantum voting system activated, collecting the decisions of 50 species. The result was unprecedented. Unanimous approval. As the session concluded, Vexna found herself watching Earth through the chamber's transparent walls, the pale blue dot barely visible at this distance. We thought we were discovering a new species, she mused to her advisors. Instead, we discovered what we could become. On the planet below, humans continued doing what they had always done, adapting, improving, teaching, learning, unaware that they had just changed the course of galactic civilization, not through conquest or technological superiority, but by simply being what evolution had made them, the universe's ultimate survivors, and now its greatest teachers.